Hey, also what I'm going to do here is talk through 5 tips that I feel are really important for doing well at OGameX. After I have finished those 5, I'll talk through a few other things as well that I think are important. So let's start with expeditions. I think it's really important to keep your expedition slots full at all times. It doesn't really matter what you send. In this example, I'm sending what in this universe is considered a very small fleet. The reason I say to keep sending the maximum amount of expeditions at all times is for the dark matter and the crates that you sometimes get from these. If I go over to the expeditions page, I'll have to scroll through a bit. Most of these are not very good, but occasionally you will get a crate or some dark matter. There we go. 4848 there. Should find a container somewhere as well in this lot. There we go. Those containers sometimes have dark matter and other really useful items in, so I think it's really important to keep farming expeditions at all times. If you are not very active during the day, then just sending a smaller fleet is okay. No one is likely to hit it. If you are active, then sending bigger fleets can be a good idea, but just be careful in case someone destroys the moon that you are farming expeditions from. The second tip is about farming inactives. Even when the inactive farming event is not on, these are still worth farming. I'll just bring up the event calendar. The inactive farming event here has already finished. That's pretty much the most important part of the game, participating in the inactive farming event. But if I go around now, the inactives will give a reasonable amount of res still. I tend to mark inactives that have defense as enemies, so they come up red. Then I just probe them instead of sending the plunder fleet. That way I know which ones I can just take the res from and which ones I actually need to probe to see what the planet has on. I'll just do a few of these. I normally probe newer inactives as well. Now some of these do have activity on, you can see here, so they probably won't be that good, but I'm still going to go through and farm anyway. I can always move my fleet about to a new area and farm there instead. One thing I will say though is don't farm for too long. Do what I have done and just farm about 30 to 40 inactives, then check that no one is trying to attack you. Attacks here can actually take 3.5 minutes now, so you have to be really careful, and that's going to get even faster later game. If I go over to the server properties, you can see 6 times fleet speed on OGameX is pretty much insane. I do like the settings for this universe though, apart from the defense debris. Anyway, what did these inactives have on? None of those were especially exciting. You can see here though, the one there did have a bit of defense. You can actually just send cargoes and break through a defense. Something like that will take the defense pretty easily, so I'll just send that quickly. You can see here 3 minutes 18 seconds for this flight, so it is pretty quick even with cargoes. The third tip that I think is really important for OGameX is to do this promote server. There's 5 of these you can do every 12 hours, so that's 100,000 dark matter per day that can be earned for free. And that is incredibly useful. This only takes a couple of minutes as well to do, so I highly recommend doing that even if you do purchase dark matter on this game as well. The fourth tip that I think is really important is regarding your moons. You should aim to build a moon on every planet. You don't want to build too much on your moon though. You definitely want a jump gate, but you can see here I haven't really built too much else. The reason for that is because it's incredibly easy to destroy a moon, so if this moon gets destroyed, it's really not worth building it up. Likewise, don't build defense on the moon. If you do build defense, other players may think you're hiding something important there. Then they'll go ahead and missile attack, destroy the moon, and if you are hiding something there, you're going to have major problems. I also recommend building the maximum sized moon. You can see I've done that here. If I go over to the simulator, the moon destruction calculator, with the minimum size moon, it hardly takes any Death Stars to destroy it. You can see here with just 50 Death Stars, it's 60%. Chance of fleet destruction, 90%. But because that moon is so small, it requires a ridiculously cheap amount of Death Stars to destroy it. If I increase the moon size to the maximum, though, you can see chance of moon destruction now is 0%, so you're going to need a lot more Death Stars. I've typed in 5 million and that's 60% chance of moon destruction, with chance of fleet destruction 90%. So if you do try and destroy an enemy moon, you're very likely going to lose the fleet that you sent, but you will also have a decent chance of destroying the moon as well. Some of my inactive farms have come in now. You can see here if I go over to the combat reports. That's actually reasonable chunks of res. That one's pretty decent. These are not spectacular, but it's still not bad. And you might be able to farm enough just from this to build up your mines or build a decent amount of fleet. So again, I will say inactive farming is pretty important on this game. And the final important tip, if you do play as a miner, you are going to need extra planet fields at some point. Now what I recommend doing here is buying the silver item. It gives you 6 fields, 96-hour cooldown, and what I recommend doing is trying to build up multiple planets rather than just building up the one. The bronze doesn't really give enough fields, and the gold and platinum items have a significant increase in cost. So I think silver works out as the best overall out of the planet field items. And that's what I've been doing. Buying 4 or 5 per day and trying to build up multiple planets that need the fields. Now to cover some other tips that I have covered in other videos. The first one is to spread your planets out. You can see here I have a wide variety of locations with all of these planets. I have a rather large amount of planets, 36 now. I've tried to spread them out as much as possible. You can probably see I reload often. I click the overview button on a regular basis. This is just in case someone is trying to attack me. When attacks only take 3.5 minutes or less, you do need to keep checking while your fleet is active. I also don't recommend filling up all your fleet slots when you are farming inactives. Always keep at least 1 slot open. This is again in case someone does try and attack you. You won't be able to move your fleet out of the way if all your slots are full. And one other thing to bear in mind, I don't recommend going around spam probing all of the active planets. I also don't recommend making low profit hits. If you do either of these things, then you're making yourself a target basically. Most of those that go around probing everything generally lose their fleet really quickly, so just bear that in mind. A few players survive, but most of them don't. So what I'm trying to say here is don't go around annoying other players. It's not smart, and you'll probably find you get crashed pretty quickly if you do that. So just bear that in mind. This is quite an unusual tip, but if you try and keep your planets looking relatively similar, I know I haven't really done a very good job of this, but if you do that, it makes it harder for the enemy to work out where you are hiding your fleet. So I have tried, you can see here, not make any of my planets significantly different. I think that's quite an important tip, and it's one not many players seem to do. The majority of players I have seen seem to just build up the one planet with a lot more than the other planets, and if I see that, that makes me think there's something hidden there. It may well be worth popping the moon there. So just bear that in mind as you play. Making all your planets look pretty similar will make it harder for the enemy to find your fleet. So if you are going to build defense, build some light lasers. That is currently by far the best defense you could build, a wall of light lasers. You could build a bit of other defense as well, but focusing mainly on the light lasers is by far the best strategy. I know there are plans to rework the combat mechanics and probably the defense as well, but currently that's the best strategy and what I recommend doing if you are going to build defense. And finally, the Empire Protection item can be really useful. If we go over to here, you can see the items. I know these are really expensive, but if you want to focus exclusively on farming expeditions, which is well worth doing later game, it's well worth getting Empire Protection. You can do this a few days before the scrap event as well. Farm expeditions like crazy, then just scrap all of the fleet you have earned from the expeditions. And there we go, I'm going to end the video at this point. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. I think I've pretty much covered all the relevant tips for this game. There might be more as well. I've covered what I feel is pretty important anyway. Some of these tips are exclusively for miners, but others are for all playing styles. So hopefully everyone can gain something from this video. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is always very much appreciated. I've included a previous video on the screen, plus a playlist, plus you can also subscribe from here if you want to do so. And thanks for watching.